Okay, welcome back to the 8th and final installment of the Deeper Learning book study. We are so happy that you have made it this far, for whoever you are out there. In this final chapter, we're really looking at the kind of the summative thoughts of the authors of the book on deeper learning and the future of education, the future of deeper learning as a school-wide phenomenon. But because we are talking to you folks at Real World Academy, we really want to focus on the takeaways. We'll talk about the book and all the text, but really focus on what is the most important stuff for you guys to think about going forward. And Phil, you just told me you have a lot of thoughts. So you could share some of those.
This is probably my favorite chapter in the entire book, but maybe I'm a guy who just likes the summary at the end. I don't know. But one little line, it's on page 390. Near the bottom, and it's underlined. It says there are no incentives for it, and it was an inquiry to the researchers and said, have you found deeper learning? And they're like, it's tough because there are no incentives for it. No principal or superintendent will ever be fired for trying to hold the status quo ever. They are in fact incentivized to hold the status quo, as are teachers. Keep your head down, just do your stuff. If your kids learn or don't learn, honestly, you might feel one way or the other, but the system is not going to penalize or reward you for either end. That culture piece needs to be different at Real World Academy. There needs to be an incentive for deeper learning, and that needs to be a peer-held incentive. Like, why? That's why we're here, and that's what's most exciting to me, because that's about the only thing that's going to change the game in my mind. Thoughts on that, Stephen?
Yeah, well, I just have on the bottom of 390, I wrote, what is a test's purpose? Right? Like when we think about the incentive structures for the traditional education system, and we think about the standardized testing, how it's been used as a carrot and a stick, right, for teachers and for schools. But I think that separating out the external necessities, like stripping down what are the absolute bare bones things that you have to address to satisfy external requirements, and can you push on those at all, right? But I guess we could talk about who gets to do that. But then once you figured out what you have to do, step back from every other external metric and ask, what is its purpose? Is it incentivizing deeper learning, right? Or whatever it is that you want, right? Because I think we just start to, you just start to think, well, everything we've done has to be done. And I just think that can't be the mantra of Real World Academy. The mantra up front has to be, what can we do differently? What are the, I think of it like a building. What are the load-bearing structures? And what else, what do we have to keep, or the whole thing will collapse? And then what are the things we can actually change?
When I work with schools and districts on change, whatever the change is, change management, change and find it, whatever, I always explain to them, and I think it's true, I've learned over decades, it is much more difficult to figure out what not to do than it is to figure out what to do. So the challenge is to say, okay, what really do we not need to do so that we can do the important stuff? One of the important things, since I've got the mic, the second thing to take away was, it was teased to us before, but I love how they hammer it home. Just as our focus needs to be on giving students agency, an opportunity for creativity, an opportunity to fail multiple times to figure it out and get to deeper learning, the system, the principal, the district has to allow and accommodate that same thing in teachers. And they have to hold each other, they have to give each other that grace too. Teachers have to be able to try and fail multiple times. Doesn't mean they're a bad teacher. It might mean they're a fantastic teacher because they're really trying to figure it out. Teachers have to be able to bring their creativity and passion to the table in a way that they don't today. And they have to be able to make real decisions in a classroom. I chose not to teach that standard. I made a professional decision because I want to focus over here. That is not okay in some systems, and it has to be okay in Real World Academy in my mind. And if we don't allow those things from the adults, we're not going to authentically allow and accommodate those things from the kids.
Right. And I think that is it's kind of a very subtle thing that might get, I don't want to say lost, but it's easy, I think, over the course of this next year for maybe the teachers to start thinking about projects and the students and the standards and the kind of mechanics of the school, and to lose sight of themselves and to lose sight of what you're talking about, which is like really deep acknowledgement of how it's going to be different for them, right? Like how they have to start practicing that now. So I have this is from the very last page of the book, and it is, I think it's actually something that Drew brought up in the first 3-day workshop about the fear that parents might have sending their kids to a school like this. And I think that it might also be worth mentioning that teachers might also be afraid, and that's okay. Like it is never easy to do different things. If it was, people would do them, right? Like they would be much more common. So I think acknowledging and trying to figure out ways to, as you said in our last session, to really embrace this community, right? And the fact that there are other people going through this with you, right? The core team really, I think, needs to take stock of the value of having a team to go through this with, and acknowledging that it's different and it's going to be hard, and there might be some fear, but figure out ways to turn that into enthusiasm and to, as you said, harness their own passions and bring that in. I think that's going to be the key.
I both as in my education as a teacher and as a consultant, I have got to witness groups of kids going at it differently over multiple years and seeing what happens on the other side. And I could not be more excited for Real World Academy to take 200, 400, 900 kids through this model, guide them through this model as they drive themselves through it. And the community is going to be blown away by these kids. They're going to be so different coming out than they went in, because they chose to grow and they chose to learn. And that's the dream of every teacher, is that these kids will want to learn in my class. And here it doesn't, you don't have to think about it. Like that's why they're here, they're learning, but it's not all fake, and you're not spending your time on constructs and try to entice them. And it's really just about trying to keep up with them. And that's what we have to put in place. The system has to accommodate the teachers, sprinting to keep up with the kids. That is, I think,
oh sure,
this book means to me on deeper learning. Turn them loose, keep the guardrails up as much as you can a little bit so they don't veer off the highway, but just put them behind the wheel, let them go.
Yeah,
so I'm excited for this. And I think this book, again, every time I read through it, I just love it. And chapter 8, just one thing, the last thing I'll say is I have a couple of different spots where I noted that the teachers really need to have a culture of, I think, engaging and learning themselves. I even made note, like, does every teacher need to do a research project every year? Does every teacher need to do a project every year in front of the kids and present? If the kids are presenting to a community of adults and others for their work, does the teacher maybe need to present to the kids something maybe different, but they're learning for the year? I don't know.
Well, and I think that there is a specific importance at the beginning of this whole process, right? Because the school is a project, right? The school is a project that they can present to the students as a project. And I think there is a fine line between like the transparency of like, we're building the plane as we are flying in it, but also being open and saying like, look, we are passionate and invested in a project in the same way that we want you all to be in your own projects. So yeah, I think that it also could just be, personal projects or passion projects, or, I forget, was it Dan who was really, we're going to build canoes or something like that.
Yeah. Kids watching adults learn, it's an amazing thing. And we rarely give them opportunity to watch us learn in real time.
Well, that's cognitive apprenticeship. You brought that up, right? The idea that you're going to apprentice students in, cognitive, right? That means like thinking, but it's really like, it's like living apprenticeship, right? Like, how do I want the students to live with enthusiasm and to learn constantly and to not be afraid of failure? Yeah, they're not going to learn it by someone saying you should not be afraid of failure. They're gonna learn because they're seeing teachers take risks. Oh, was that it? Was that our timer?
It is the timer. Only does it every third session or so. That's funny. But you're right on. No, they have to witness it. They have to see it. It's the most profound thing. And then when it happens in real time and not in a textbook and not in a video and not in a social media feed, but in real time, they watch a teacher fail, pick themselves up, come back at it the next day with the kids in front of them and try it again and are transparent about the whole thing. That lifts kids up. That shows them where the path is.
Yep.
So, all right. Anything else, Stephen? I can't believe we're at the end of the book again.
I want to find another book so we can chat about it, and
we can just keep going through this one over.
Hopefully,
and over.
people will continue to watch. But this book is particularly fantastic. So
I think we broke the internet. That's my right. Thank you, everyone. If you made it this far, congratulations. You finished the book study asynchronously. That's kind of a cool thing we tried, and hopefully, maybe this is a tool set that you can use with your students, so that they can interact again through flexible time, creative time, but still engage in a different way as a community.
Right. And I'll speak for you as well, Phil, and say, if you guys have any thoughts, comments, questions, disagreed, agreed with us, put comments on the Flipgrid or email us or send us a letter on parchment or our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. No, I'm just kidding.
You can't handle more than 2 followers. That's the plan we're on.
That's it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Stephen.